Has anyone ever wondered how actions in the present affect the future? Or how actions done differently in the past will affect the present? It is impossible to predict the exact effect of an action until the action has been taken out and the corresponding events have occurred. There are many points in history where a small event has created a chain reaction of sorts with extreme implications. But one of these sticks out to me in particular: the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. If I could go back in time to talk to one person in history, I would talk to Franz Ferdinand, warning him of his death. His death set off a cascading set of events that has changed the world forever. I've always been fascinated by how smaller events have large implications and drastically influence the future. And I've done a large amount of research on Franz Ferdinand, his death, and the effects of his death to give this speech. Franz Ferdinand, depicted in the visual, was born on September 18th, 1863, in Austria, which at the time was the Austrian Empire, and shortly after, for the rest of his life, was then Austria-Hungary. He was then shot and killed, along with his wife, on June 28th, 1914, in the Bosnian capital. Now, this visual depicts what his assassination may have looked like. Earlier in the day, before what this visual depicts, a bomb was thrown at his car, which bounced off, blowing up the car behind him. Later on in that day, he decided to pay a visit to those that were wounded by the bomb, but he never got there. While his car was stopped at a street corner, a man, the assassin, acting as a bystander and just a normal citizen, pulled out his pistol, shot twice, and killed both Franz and his wife, Sophie. As seen in History.com, the assassination was carried out by Gavrilo Princip, who at the time was a Serbian nationalist, and had the intentions of helping Bosnia and Herzegovina get out of Austria-Hungary rule to create a Yugoslavic state. Now, Franz was the heir to the Austria-Hungarian throne, so this assassination was quite a big deal at the time. And since tensions between Austria-Hungary and Serbia were already quite high, and this assassination was carried out by a Serbian nationalist, that broke those tensions between them, and shortly after the assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, starting what we know today as World War I. Now, one can argue that if World War I never happened, World War II may not have happened either as a consequence. The main point that proves this is how Hitler was exactly able to rise to power. Because if he wasn't able to rise to power, World War II would have never come close to being a thing. He was able to exploit the effects that World War I had on Germany to rally all of Germany behind him. As seen in this visual, he was able to win over almost everyone that was a common citizen and shared in those effects of World War I. As read in the Times of Israel, after World War I, Germany had a crushing defeat, and with their people feeling, lost and defeated, they wanted a place to put all of their hardship and blame, and they chose the Jews as their scapegoat. The Jews were accused of not joining the war in high enough numbers, even when they were in the war, not taking their responsibilities seriously, and overall being against Germany. Now, these accusations had no merit, nothing behind them. They were forced, because the German public really wanted to scapegoat someone, and with the Jews being that scapegoat, Hitler was able to take those feelings, those rising feelings, and strengthen them, fortify them, expand them to other groups, and then rally the entire country behind him and those beliefs. And then he went on to invade Poland, which started World War II. World War II was one of, if not the most influential war ever fought, and has completely shaped the world that we know today. With such an influential event, there are countless following and affecting occurrences that happened that probably wouldn't have if the war was never fought. With an event like this, there are so many, in fact, that I could never cover them all in this short speech. So instead, I'll just be going over the most impactful and influential. There's good and bad effects of World War II, but of course, the bad will outweigh the good in this case. Some of the good being the end of USSR, the end of colonialization, the end of imperialism, the start of the UN, and major strides in equal rights. And some of the bad being the destruction of many countries, death, sickness, and rising tensions all throughout the world. The largest of those being the rising tensions between Russia and the United States, causing the Cold War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the arms race, and the space race. It is crazy to me how the death of one man over 100 years ago has set off a seemingly endless chain of events that has rampaged for the past decade and is still active today. If I could have gone back in time to stop the death of Franz Ferdinand, imagine how the last 100 years of history would look different. Wars may not have been fought, technology may not have been created, alliances wouldn't have been formed. There are a countless number of an infinite number of different paths times could have taken. Now, after learning all about Franz Ferdinand, his death, and the effects of his death, if you were Gavrilo Princip on that street corner, would you pull the trigger?